And we thought it was important to make certain that everyone knew what the next steps were in those states where we're seeing these threats emerge. But first, let me start out with just an update on Florida. The Florida legislative session is coming to an end in terms of the ability for there to be any action on bills and moving back and forth between the legislative chambers. And one of the casualties in that legislative process was the proposed Kratom bill that was initially proposed by Senator Collins and mirrored by a bill that was sponsored by Representative Owen. And a very interesting thing happened in that Florida legislature where on the House side, Representative Owen's bill was hijacked by the Speaker's office and they folded into it a very significant set of restrictions on hemp products and added to the overall fiscal impact of the bill. The underlying bill that Senator Collins had proposed had a fiscal note of somewhere north of $15 million. And this is in a state where, in the current budgetary situation Florida's in, was a huge lift for there to be that kind of an outlay for taxpayers to take on that burden. The House version, which was had additional provisions on it related to hemp, drove that price tag up to north of $18 million. And so when the appropriators who have to evaluate the way that the budgeting takes place determined that that was an excessive fiscal note and they simply terminated the bill. There was an attempt, which we supported at the American Kratom Association by Senator Collins, where he would have specifically identified 7-hydroxymetrogenine products as being banned because if they were synthesized or semi-synthesized, including being oxidized, which increases the potency artificially of the alkaloids and metabolites in the kratom plant. Florida now, all of those bills have died, and there is no possibility that we're going to see any legislative action out of Florida in this current legislative session. I am hopeful, and all indicators are that we're going to be able to have a more unified position going forward with an agreed upon Kratom Consumer Protection Act model that will be implemented in the states, and that model will be endorsed by all of the major competing consumer and industry groups in the industry. That's our current situation. We're hopeful that that will be a reality when we turn the corner coming into Florida in the next session. And we're very encouraged that some very hard negotiations have led to that position. And I think it will benefit all kratom consumers in the United States. There is a ban bill that is up for consideration. This is a new one in the state of Massachusetts. That hearing will take place at 1 p.m. on Tuesday. It is the first hearing in a string of procedural matters that will be taken up by the Massachusetts Assembly in order to get some sort of a legislative action taken on this bill. It will be a very tough row to hoe for the ban proponents in Massachusetts because there is a KCPA that is also on the books there. And every indication is that the legislature is inclined to support a regulatory approach as opposed to a ban, which of course they should be. But the immediate problems that we're confronting, both in the state of Texas and the state of Louisiana, are significant and they need to be dealt with. Let me start first with Louisiana. Those of you that have had the opportunity to go and watch or did watch when it was in real time, the hearing that was conducted by the Senate Judiciary C Committee, chaired by Senator Morris, where he, as the sponsor of the Kratom ban bill, and also was in fact the chair of the committee, which made it a fairly delicate situation that he was confronting when he was working through all of that. But he clearly was biased, and he had the chair and the power of the chair that comes with the actual evaluation of a bill. And so he had the freedom to interrupt the speakers and those that were testifying at will. And he did so. And if you haven't seen it, you need to go back and watch it, and you will see how blatantly biased and unfair he was. And he came to the table, and perhaps it was in good faith, but he was completely misinformed about this. He choreographed in a very excellent fashion all of the advocates for his bill, allowed them whatever time they needed in order to say whatever they needed to say, despite how inaccurate the information that they were conveying was actually being relied upon by the committee members. The committee chair has immense power because, in his hands, in this case, he controls a lot of other bills that these committee members want to see acted upon in a favorable way. And so he obviously leveraged his position with them. But if any objective observer were looking at the actual the testimony, it is clear that the scientific testimony that was provided by Dr. Henningfield and Dr. Smith, and there was also a medical doctor who came in from California, but who herself was a native of Louisiana, which kind of caught Chairman Morris off guard. But just to illustrate a couple of the things that were egregiously wrong, Chairman Morris made the statement that the Mayo Clinic had conducted several safety studies on kratom, and they had concluded, as is on their website, that kratom is very dangerous. I made the point to Chairman Morris, he didn't like it when I did it, that in fact, the Mayo Clinic hasn't spent a single penny on any research on kratom. And in fact, all they do is repeat what the FDA says about kratom. And what he didn't allow me to say, but which is true, that the Mayo Clinic has an information sharing agreement with the FDA and Yale University where they are paid federal money in order to disseminate the information that's provided by the FDA. Unfortunately, the Mayo Clinic, and of course, those that watched the hearing saw Senator Morris say, "Oh, well, you kind of dismissed what I said by saying, well, the Mayo Clinic has no credibility," obviously mocking me in that point. If in fact the Mayo Clinic has no credibility on the kratom issue, it is because it is a self-inflicted wound that they themselves are responsible for, because the Mayo Clinic has not kept up with even the FDA's admissions about the new safety data that the FDA themselves conducted with their single ascending dose study that determined that kratom is well tolerated at all dose levels. Nor does the Mayo Clinic acknowledge the actual statements by the Secretary of HHS, where he said that the deaths are rare, and when they do occur, it's because of adulterated products and polydrug use and unrelated health conditions. The Mayo Clinic has not updated their page with respect to the information that is available from Dr. Joie, who said when he rejected the FDA's dossier on the evidence and data presented to justify their scheduling in 2018, where Dr. Joie, who, by the way, is a fellow Louisianan, said that specifically that the FDA's evidence and data was embarrassingly poor evidence and data and a failure to consider the overall public health. The Mayo Clinic simply ignored all of that. You can only conclude it's not because they have independently done any studies. They have not. And it's not because they're looking for the truth, because obviously they're not. They are simply responding to the information sharing agreement for which they are paid by the FDA in order to republish information that the FDA has actually said. And nobody's bothered to update nor to hold to account the FDA itself for the information that they had. You also would have seen that Senator Morris discredited leading scientists in the world because they were not medical doctors. And he went after Dr. Jack Henningfield, who himself was the former head of clinical pharmacology at the National Institute on Drug Abuse for decades, and who is internationally recognized for his decades of work on addiction and public health and substance abuse. And Senator Morris discounted what Dr. Henningfield's scientific expertise is, and he didn't look at the quality of the evidence, nor did he evaluate clearly what the credentials that are held by both Dr. Henningfield and by Dr. Kirsten Smith, who also testified. Dr. Henningfield made the point, ignored by Senator Morris, that he trains medical doctors on substance abuse, addiction liability, and the methods that should be used by all medical professionals to provide appropriate medical services to those individuals that need interventions in those areas. But Senator Morris wasn't interested in the truth, nor was he interested in learning about what the truth was about kratom. He also made the absurd claim that there are no double blind, placebo controlled studies on kratom safety. It is simply incorrect. When it was pointed out to them that, in fact, there was a study that was conducted by Johnson Foods, a kratom vendor in the United States, with a clinical research organization, highly credible one, in Canada, for the purpose of doing regulatory action in the United States, he said, "Oh." Senator Morris said, "Oh, well, that's not a U.S. based company." Well, it doesn't have to be. And then he tried to discredit it because it was an industry funded study. Every new drug application that it goes through the FDA based on user fees is funded by pharmaceutical companies. Every single one. There are some cases where the original research is done at NIH, but then it is picked up by a pharmaceutical manufacturer, and the billions of dollars that are required to pay for an evaluation of a new drug application and all of the studies, the human clinical trials that have to be conducted, are all paid by that company, all with the self-interest of trying to promote the actual product that they want to see the FDA approve. But all of those studies are done with these contract research organizations who are held to very strict ethical standards, and the FDA themselves require that those companies meet specific standards to make sure that the quality of the information is actually reliable. And that's what the CRO that did the Johnson Food study with a double-blind, placebo-controlled study on kratom safety, but Senator Morris didn't want to hear about it. He has this narrow view that he's right about kratom being dangerous. He also was unwilling to even consider the fact that the FDA conducted their own single ascending dose study in 2023 that was announced in 2024, which was the precursor to the FDA now conducting an ongoing human abuse potential study, or a HAP study, which evaluates addiction liability. But you could not do that study, the HAP study, unless you could demonstrate that you could safely administer and ethically administer kratom to human subjects. And so there were 40 people in the cohort of the study, including those in the placebo group, double-blind, placebo-controlled studies. The human subjects didn't know what they were taking. And what the FDA found was that their hypothesis that there would be significant adverse events that would occur at somewhere around the 8 grams consumed in a 5-minute period never happened. In fact, they got to 12 grams in that 5-minute period, and they saw a minor adverse event of nausea, which is what happens when you consume too much kratom. But in this case, any plant material, as the placebo group was ingesting, that level, 12 grams in a 5-minute period, is going to make you nauseous. It was then that the FDA abandoned the single ascending dose study, and they concluded that kratom appears to be well tolerated at all dose levels. Senator Morris didn't want to hear that because that didn't fit the narrative that he has. And we pointed out to him that, in fact, that the FDA themselves, when called to account before a federal judge in the Southern District of California in a kratom import case, when the judge wanted to know specifically what the FDA's position was on the danger of kratom, because he was being asked to sentence an individual to an extended jail term, he wanted to know the truth of it. And the FDA refused to appear in that courtroom, and they explained through the U.S. attorney that, in fact, the FDA, have not yet determined whether kratom is dangerous. And yet, Senator Morris, somehow, having a body of evidence and data that no one else seems to have, has concluded that Louisiana needs to ban kratom. And of course, that's ridiculous. The FDA's own evolving position contradicts what Senator Morris is saying, and there is no basis for him to move forward with this. And I think that the critical point that we were making, and one that we now are charged to make on our own to the members of the Senate, they will vote on Monday on this bill. We are mobilizing everyone in the kratom community to contact the members of the Louisiana Senate and point out the deficiencies and the failure of Senator Morris to accurately portray what the safety profile of kratom is. You cannot criminalize Louisiana consumers of kratom based on misinformation and horribly mischaracterized information and data about kratom when thousands, well, actually 325,000 plus Louisiana residents use kratom in order to improve the quality of their lives for a general feeling of well-being, to improve their overall health and well-being. And some who use it to manage chronic pain, some use it to reduce dependence on opioids. And those are the things that the National Institutes on Drug Abuse Director, Nora Volkow, touts as being why kratom should be readily available to people, particularly in remote areas, and that includes Louisiana. You would think that Senator Morris would understand that point and would accept it, but he failed to do so. So our challenge in the state of Louisiana between tonight and Monday is to marshal every one of our advocates to make phone calls and to email every member of the Senate in Louisiana to explain why Senator Morris simply has it wrong. We haven't seen a ban on kratom products or on kratom being sold in states since 2017 in Rhode Island. And Rhode Island is poised to withdraw that ban, and the governor has committed to sign the bill if it goes through in the current form that it was filed in. And we will have 5 states that ban kratom, and the most recent one that did so will have removed that ban and enacted a Kratom Consumer Protection Act. That's what the senators in Louisiana need to hear. They need to understand, and we can only do it with the outcry that mirrors what happened in 2016 when we had over 146,000 people that signed the We the People petition on the White House website saying don't ban kratom. We need to replicate that now and tell the good senators in the state of Louisiana that there is a better option: regulate, do not ban. And of course, the regulation bill is already started in the House, and that is an option for the legislature to consider. It was disappointing that in the course of the hearing that Senator Morris convened, that a member of the Louisiana governor's policy team filed a support card, not actually testifying. That was good news. But obviously, we have work to do with the governor as well. We need to protect kratom and the consumers, Louisiana consumers of kratom, safely formulated kratom products. The kinds of products that need to be banned are those synthesized and semi-synthesized product that are called 7-hydroxymetrozine, and now they're doing fancy reformulations, including other alkaloids that have been isolated and synthesized in the kratom plant. So they're trying to get away from 7-hydroxymetrozine and actually isolating, synthesizing other alkaloids in the plant, all of which have an unknown safety profile and clearly have a much more powerful effect on the mu opioid receptors than pure kratom and extract kratom that's properly extracted using food grade solvents approved by the FDA. We have got to rally this community. We cannot take for granted that nobody ever passes a ban. This is ground zero for a ban, and we need to fight back, and we need to raise our voices, and we need to do everything we can in order to stop it. So I'm encouraging everyone to reach out to your social networks. Use the link that's provided on protectkratom.org that allows you to go and access the offices that need to be contacted, allows you to give a personal story, and will give you access to the phone numbers to make phone calls to these senators. We need to let them know that the kratom community is being abused by Senator Morris's bill, and however well-intentioned he may be, and I'm not so certain that he's as pure as that he wants to appear to be, because clearly the evidence and data in front of him should have given him required a second look and should have required him to stand down from his current position. But we have to fight back, and everyone should do it as with all the networks that you have in order to help us on this. Let me also talk about where we are in the state of Texas. And before I do that, let me just, I know there's confusion about legislative procedures, and there were rumors circulating that after the committee vote, that the House, or I'm sorry, the floor of the Senate moved to approve the committee bill, and it was now passed. That is not accurate. These arcane procedures that are used by legislative bodies go through a process, and that process in the state of Louisiana, which is fairly consistent with other states, required the Senate as a body to accept the committee report, which was passed out without objection, which included the Kratom ban bill. All that meant was that they accepted the committee report. It did not mean that they approved the legislation. That's going to happen this coming Monday. So people that think that, oh, they've already approved the ban, it's not accurate. We still are in play here, and we will fight on the Senate floor with your voice in supporting this, and then we'll go to the House floor if we lose the Senate fight. So we have lots of opportunities here to have our voices heard. So that's Louisiana. In the state of Texas, Senator Perry, of course, has at least on the surface said, I'm not going to ban all kratom. I'm just going to regulate it and make sure we get rid of the bad stuff. His view is that you can't tell what's good and bad. So what he's done is he's essentially said that you can only sell pure leaf kratom. You cannot sell an extract, and you can't sell any other product that is synthesized or semi-synthesized. We agree with that. But he calls all of that being bad. And what he's done is constructively set up a ban because you cannot sell any kratom product, including pure leaf kratom, in any store that also sells alcohol or cigarettes or vape products or hemp products. That virtually wipes out all of the retail outlets in the state of Texas. It is disruptive and unfair to thousands of kratom small businesses. It is completely undermines the kratom marketplace for Texas vendors of kratom, puts them at risk for being able to stay in business, all in order to satisfy this desire by Senator Perry that he's going to go after kratom because he believes it's a dangerous product. And there's no dissuading him from how bad his position is. So where we are currently is that the Senate bill has passed in the Senate, the Texas Senate, and it's now before the Texas Public Health Committee. Our lobbying teams, and unified with all of the advocacy groups, which includes the Global Kratom Coalition and the Botanicals for Better Health and Wellness, are fighting against this bill, and we want to defeat this bill because it is a constructive ban on kratom. Now, unfortunately, we also have, as an ally, the Heart Group, which wants to kill this bill too, because it obviously would ban 7-OH products and the other synthesized and purely made up from a test tube kind of products that they're now peddling. We don't need their support or help. We want to continue to call them out, but they are on the side of banning this bill or defeating this ban as well. Will need in Texas the same kind of strong effort that will be needed in Louisiana in order to defeat this ban. It is troubling that there are so many of these states that are now regurgitating these bans, largely fed, I suppose, by the good funding of the trial attorneys who are trying to demonize kratom and trying to get on the books an additional ban so they can go into court and say, look how dangerous this product is because this state has banned it. We have 15 states that have passed the Kratom Consumer Protection Act. We know there will be more coming. We don't need a step back or two steps back because some state, because of the well-funded efforts by trial attorneys, gets to actually thwart the progress that we're making based on inaccurate, incomplete, and outdated science. And that's the bottom line. I know that some in the anti-kratom community are cheering all of this, and they're sort of unfortunately, the tools that are being used by some of these trial attorneys in order to promulgate false, inaccurate, and incomplete information about kratom. You simply have to look to the conclusions of the Secretary of HHS that says the kratom deaths are rare, and when they do happen, adulterated products, polydrug use, and unidentified underlying health conditions. When you see that same statement by the National Institute on Drug Abuse, the deaths are rare. When they occur, adulterated products, polydrug use, undefined health conditions. When the FDA says it, the deaths are rare. So if there's something that someone knows that it contradicts that position, which is why kratom is not scheduled at the federal level, then why in the world would they convince or be allowed to convince some unsuspecting legislator in some state that they should carry this crusade forward when in fact it's not justified by the science? Most of these states mirror the same 8 factors that are required by the Federal Controlled Substances Act in order to schedule a substance. In some states, it's word for word. That's true in Massachusetts, it's true in Louisiana, it's true in Texas. So the same standard has to exist. So it's not too far a reach to say, what do you know that the federal government doesn't know because the FDA wants to ban kratom? They just aren't able to do so based on the science. And so that's got to be our argument as we go forward and why we have to unify and actually go after these issues as best we can to make sure that our message is heard. So we are going to give you specific instructions in the next couple of days on how to deal with Texas as well, once we get an idea of when the Public Health Committee will convene a hearing along the way. So that's the update. I'm going to go to some of the questions here, and we'll try to get through them as quickly as we can. John asked, it seems the issue with Texas SB 1868 is to do with the language of the overall alkaloid composition rather than stating 0.1% of 7OH threshold by dry weight measurement. Is this language an error? What is true is that that bans all kratom because all kratom has some level of 7-hydroxymetrogenine as a metabolite as it develops in the drying process. That 0.1% is at first, it's not quantifiable. I told Senator Perry's staffer this. They didn't care. They know that that's an effective ban on all kratom if it were to be tested. So it's not an error, it's deliberate. And these senators have no interest in the natural leafs being able to be on it. And it is a mistake for anyone in the kratom community to think, oh, I can keep the pure leaf. I'm willing to give up extracts. That is a mistake. It's a mistake on policy. It's a mistake on science. It doesn't comport with what we know about all of this. John then says, lastly, wouldn't the House recognize that Texas already has a KCPA? They should. Senator Perry doesn't want to because he said it's not being enforced correctly. There are ways you can enhance enforcement. There are ways that we can assist with that. It just requires a stronger enforcement mechanism in the bill, and we've provided a set of amendments which Senator Perry has rejected. And then John asked if that could quickly cause House members to shoot the bill down. We hope so, but it's not going to happen unless you raise your voices to make sure that kratom consumers are heard and that these members understand that there's an impact with their constituents along the way. So if we adopt the standard that Senator Perry has embodied in his bill, it will ban all kratom. Trust me, there's no out on all of that. The reason that the senators didn't deal with this error is that Senator Perry is a very powerful member of that body, and they believe him. And this is such a difficult issue to explain. And when you are in the business of explaining something that is that difficult to unwind and dissect for them, they tend to gloss over it. So it's one of those things that happens. Kamal says, with fentanyl deaths down nearly 30% this year, do you think 7-hydroxymetrogenine could play a role in harm reduction? And how should we balance regulating without risk of a rebound effect with prohibition? So Kamal, with all due respect, anyone who suggests that the 30% reduction in opioid or fentanyl deaths this year is attributable to 7-hydroxymetrogenine is up in the night. The reason why you see the significant reduction in opioid-related overdose deaths is twofold. One, we're coming off of the COVID experience where people were isolated, depressed, and that led to a very large spike in overdose deaths because of mental health issues that are attended to it. But secondly, the reduction is more targeted, and this has been documented with studies that have been conducted because of the wide distribution of Narcan that has helped people avoid an overdose death. Not that they don't overdose, they do, but Narcan has saved their lives, and that is a better example of this. There is no scientific data, none, zero, that would in any way corroborate the claim that 7-hydroxymetrogenine supporters want to make, that somehow they've been the angelic savior to come in and reduce the number of fentanyl or opioid-related overdose deaths in the United States. It makes no sense. It is not true, and no one should be caught repeating it if they don't want to be called out for being exactly what it is, which is just junk science. It just doesn't make any sense at all. Um, Kamal also asked if we're limited in capacity, which 10 Texas House reps would you suggest we who would you suggest we prioritize contacting? We will provide the information on the committee members in the Public Health Committee. That'll be our first target. And then if it moves through that committee, we'll look at where it goes next. And it could get co-referred to another committee or go to the floor. We obviously are going to want to fight this battle and we'll give you information. So watch the email chain that comes through. Anthony asked, are we able to publish or post any of these contradictions as it relates to the misinformation, fake news, as it relates to the FDA Mayo Clinic? We we are obviously contesting this. I'm sending a letter to Senator Morris about how contradictory this is. You'll see lots of information flowing. We can articulate these issues with fact sheets that we are disseminating through our lobbying teams to the members of the legislative bodies in both Louisiana and in Texas. So thank you for that. Question is, will there be another in-person hearing in Louisiana? Misty asked that. Very likely there will be. It's not required, but we expect that there will be because we have a KCPA in Louisiana as well as the ban bill. Jeff asked, do you think there ever come a day when the Global Kratom Coalition and the AK can find any kind of agreement to at least appear to be a united front? Yes, we are working hard on that. The political process is about compromise, and we have worked diligently, and I credit the GKC and the Botanics for Better Health and Wellness for the willingness to sit down and have these discussions. And we are on the cusp of being able to all agree on language of a model Kratom Consumer Protection Act going forward. So we're not going to be fighting with one another. It doesn't mean that we won't have disagreements, but it does mean that we're going to have a more united front so we don't have legislators questioning what we're doing because there's another group pushing for a different regulatory framework than the one that we're promoting. So stay tuned, Jeff. Great question. It's overdue. It needed to get done, and I think we're very close to do it. And as I say, I credit the GKC and the Botanics for Better Health and Wellness for helping us with that. Brian asked, it seems though a few months ago you mentioned that there was some good news coming out of South Carolina. Well, actually, the good news is out of North Carolina. I think we're getting closer to a bill. South Carolina, we had a bill that was a good KCPA. It got hijacked by the 70H people. That bill is going to die in the South Carolina legislature, and we'll take it up next year. It's a 2-year cycle there, and so we'll be back fighting this next year. David says, when will you talk about the powder requirement of less than 0.1%, which would make it basically banned? The technical discussion is this. The quantification testing that can be done on 7-hydroxymetrogenine without it being the most extraordinarily expensive test possible only gets down to 0.3%. We know that the 7-hydroxymetrogenine occurs naturally in the drying process as a metabolite. So all powder, kratom powder, has some 7-OH in it, and all would show at least at 0.3%. It would be the quantification level. Getting down to 0.1% is impossible to prove, and so they could ban all kratom powder along the way. It doesn't mean that they will. It means they can. And when you empower a regulatory body, a state agency, to have discretion, I think you could find they're going to abuse their discretion, and that's why most of our KCPAs limit what these state regulatory agencies can and cannot do with respect to kratom. Michael asks or says, I'm in Illinois. My nearby local gas station smoke shops are selling 7-OH at the front. I'm convinced it's contributing to negative media and local state bans. Absolutely true. Vendors have a responsibility too. These products are scientifically untested. They have no basis for safety. We had the lead scientist representing the Heart Group appear in one of our forums in Florida in January. And when asked, what is the scientific basis as to meet the requirement at the federal level that you have to have a reasonable basis for safety based on the labeling? And he said, well, we haven't done those yet, but we hope to have them done by 2026, which means that those products on their face are illegal. And when you look at some of the reports that are coming out about their addiction liability and the fact that the testing that's been done by the University of Florida shows that 7-OH is a full-blown agonist, fully binding to the mu-opioid receptors, where kratom is a partial agonist, and that full binding effect goes right to the euphoric high center and right to the respiratory system. So very dangerous thing. Uh, Jan asked, "What can we do in Massachusetts?" The hearing on Tuesday is the first step in a very long process in Massachusetts. I'm going to be there to testify, and we're going to challenge the basis for the ban using good science. We'll see what the next step is if the committee wants to just sit on it or whether they want to move it forward, and then we'll activate all of our friends in the kratom community to be activated there. Bobby LeBlanc says, "Beck, you always on point when you speak. Such a blessing. Is this webinar going out to the senators and House members, or do you need to send it out yourselves?" You can share this webinar with every member of the Louisiana legislature and the Texas legislature. We encourage you to do it. We want to make sure that these legislators understand that there is another side to this story than the one that they're being sold by some influential member of their legislative body. Um, Adam says he couldn't make it to DC because he had a procedure. Can you give us a little synopsis on the business insurance discussion? My apologies for being off topic. Adam, that's a very complex issue. Uh, let's talk offline about this. There, for vendors that are looking for insurance, it's a high risk environment, and there are groups that are now identifying ways that you can be insured. And I think it's worth a discussion. But Adam, let's talk offline about that. Reach out to Stephanie Taylor in our office, and that's Stephanie at AmericanKratom.org, and we can get you that information. Uh, Nicholas says, does it seem like there could be some other entities behind the politicians who are trying to propose a ban? Perhaps a party of interest sees kratom as a threat. Any solutions to this? Well, the solution is that the truth comes out. And the problem is that in many legislative bodies, they're not organized or structured to accept the truth. They accept only what constituents say or the misinformation that's peddled by anti whatever the substance is groups. And so our challenge is to make sure that we deliver unfiltered truth to these legislative members, which is why we focus so much on the activation of our kratom networks in order to influence these members to look at the truth, and we share that truthful information. So that's essentially where we're going to be. Billy asked, will the AK sue Texas or Louisiana if the bills pass? The answer to that is a qualified yes. You have to have standing. Legislative bodies get great discretion along the way, but if we can demonstrate that the public policy that was adopted, in fact, has harms, then we have a standing. This has been done in other states with hemp products. And so, and Bobby LeBlanc pointed that out to me the other day when I was pretty negative about this particular issue. I think there is an opportunity, and we hope we don't get there. But when we get there, we're ready to fight. There's no question about it. John asked, why don't they just follow the industry standard of lab analysis where all natural leaf tests no higher than about 0.03% of 7-OH by weight? I agree. I think we can look at this. We can find ways that that we can identify what the thresholds be that are reasonably available with quality testing, unbiased testing, and we can change that language. We're looking at a number of amendments that we have offered that, John, that address this very issue. So great point, and we'll continue to work on that. Carrie has a number of suggestions about other bills that are up there that really impact the contradictory nature of what Texas is trying to do right now. And that's part of the legislative process. The legislators have ideas, they advance them, and it's the filter of the process itself that delivers a final passage on this legislation. So I think that that there is a fundamental inconsistency when you say, "Oh, I want to ban this product," and yet they, on the other hand, you see the conservative philosophy of the Texas legislative body. It seems to contradict this prohibitionist standpoint. And so it's a great point, Carrie. And I think you're right. We point out the fact that this is a terrible inconsistency with the this particular situation in Texas. Nicholas asked, is there any reason to go after synthetic 7-OH? I don't know if it makes the association appear more reasonable, credible. Those politicians are already keen on prohibiting kratom. We have to go after synthetic 7-OH because our defense of the kratom plant is that it's safe as a kratom powder or leaf, pure leaf, or an extract using properly approved FDA food grade solvents. We're not in the business of hyped up, synthetically potent products. I listened to the promoter from Hart, the representative of Hart, Vince Sanders, testify in the Rhode Island legislature 2 weeks ago, and he said that the recommended serving size that should be in the Rhode Island legislation for 7-OH products was 28 milligrams. There is not a scintilla of scientific evidence that documents the safety of a 7-OH product at 7 milligrams, let alone 28 milligrams. And to suggest that is mind boggling, and which is why we have to fight. If we support synthetic 7-OH at these astronomically high levels, you will see health impacts will be attributed back to pure leaf kratom and properly extracted kratom products. And we simply can't have that. We think that the whole idea here is that we regulate kratom, and it's not the Wild West. And you just can't, because you can make it, decide to sell it because you can make a quick buck, and you might hurt people. It doesn't matter to those people. Then that's where we have to draw the line along the way. Uh, and we're not in the business of trying to appear reasonable. We want to be reasonable, and that being reasonable requires us to have support for a methodology for regulation that makes common sense, and that's what we advocate for. Dustin asks, don't you think this whole idea of banning kratom is just a glorified social acceptability issue disguised as health policy? Alcohol, tobacco, and caffeine are proven to be tons more powerful, addictive, and dangerous than kratom, yet these bureaucrats think it's fine to drink and smoke your pains and worries away. They think it's safe enough to be okay, but kratom is evil. You can't accept the hypocrisy. I agree. Here's the problem. Legislators have been conditioned to accept the fact that as a society, we accept the risk associated with alcohol consumption and the deaths and adverse events that come with it, and smoking. It's just embedded into us. And now, new product, they just say, oh, the reflexive knee-jerk reaction is, well, let's ban this stuff. You see it with intoxicating hemp products. You see it with and I don't like that association with kratom, obviously. You see it with controlled substances with THC content. Kratom has never, ever been a controlled substance. Kratom has never even made the DEA's National Drug Threat Assessment Report. So the mythology that's around the dangers of kratom was a made-up bit of nonsense by the FDA, which has been capitalized by some of the kratom danger awareness people that do not know what they're talking about when it comes to the actual reports of the levels of kratom that would cause a death, and trial lawyers who have a vested interest in trying to find another pocket to pick with people that have suffered through unimaginable losses that they want to attribute to kratom. And I'll tell you what, I made the point in Louisiana, and it is a fact that 7-hydroxymetrogenine, because of the way that it interacts in your body, when you die, and if it were a 7-OH attributable death, it washes out of your bloodstream so quickly that even NMS Labs, their expert that testified, I'm sorry, that presented his findings at the International Symposium on Kratom at the University of Florida in February, where he said that unfortunately, medical examiners and coroners don't know to test for 7-OH, and when they do, they can't find it. It takes a very sophisticated test, which they don't have access to, and so you have misreported kratom fatalities that are attributable to metrogeny because that's all that's left in the bloodstream. And his fear was that there will be error after error in attributing a death to kratom when it should be to 7-hydroxymetrogenine. So I think that's very important along the way. Nicholas asks I'm sorry, Misty asks, is the Louisiana meeting on Monday public? This is a Senate vote on the floor, and it will be live stream, so you can watch it when they take it up. You'll have to check on what the schedule when it'll come up on the floor and just wait until it gets there. It's possible that they'll have too much business and they'll push it a day or two, but that's the best we could expect. Nicholas asked, will there be an appeal done soon regarding kratom being scheduled in Wisconsin? We have about exhausted our discussions with the Wisconsin Controlled Substances Board, and so that appeal is going to be sent in pretty quickly going along here. John asked, as a vendor, I was approved for a card processor recently, but today authorized net the gateway denied the application. The product we were selling because the product we were selling is Pure Leaf. Uh, every one of these credit card processors use an algorithm that looks at risk assessment of how they may be implicated in the facilitation and processing for products. And unfortunately, this is a byproduct of it. It is wrong. It's very much akin to the process in the Obama administration where they tried to squeeze out credit card authorizations for guns and other objectionable products that they didn't like. And that failed. But we're back in the soup here with these algorithms that are singling out Kratom. And that's a real problem. We're working hard on trying to get that done. Uh, Adam asked, if the state passes the KCPA and a consumer finds a bad actor making the industry look bad, who do they report it to? It goes to the state regulatory agency. They can obviously report it to the FDA through the MedWatch program, the FAERS database, the FDA Adverse Event Reporting database. They can report it to the Department of Health in any state, and they will get some attention. Adam also asked, what update on Facebook's new draconian anti-creative measures? We're fighting hand-to-hand combat with them every day. We take one step forward and four steps back. They are hard to deal with. I need to amend that. They're impossible to deal with. They're all highly mechanized and computerized, and they have a couple of people that are in foreign countries that are monitoring all of this, and very difficult for us, but we continue to fight along the way. Anthony says, you just mentioned a fact sheet that's being used in recent correspondence. Can it be shared? Absolutely. Mark, let's put up on the protectkratom.org the Texas fact sheet that we just submitted and the Louisiana one. We can absolutely share those with you along the way. Jennifer asked, have you seen that some of the legislation in Tennessee has the intention of a full ban next session? Some are going to push that, but that resolution that was passed also called for regulating or a ban. We're going to obviously play to the regulation side of it because we think that this is where the fight's going to take place. Amanda asked, in Massachusetts on Tuesday where it's at the state capitol. I don't know the actual room number yet, but when we find it out, we'll send out an alert. And those who want to come and observe that or participate in it, you're obviously welcome to do so. Dustin says that I work for my county's judge. He knows that Kratom has helped me with my multiple sclerosis. Would it help if he were willing to talk to some of these legislators? Absolutely. There was a member of a local parish that spoke in Louisiana and talked about how her parish was going to ban Kratom, but she was now leading the charge not to do that. These are important testimonials of government officials who are in evaluating positions to be able to share that testimony. So Dustin, absolutely, if you can get your county judge to testify to these legislators, that would be a fabulous thing. I don't know what state you're in, but let us know, and we'll be glad to help along the way. Michael says, just found out about this meeting late. Can you give a brief update on the status of Texas? This will be up on YouTube almost immediately afterwards, and you can watch the whole thing. And John points out the credit processor was shocked. It's because the algorithms are pulling the stunt. And so I'm sure that that's along the way. Dustin, I've already addressed the AK and GKC ever unite. I don't know. But we're going to be united in pursuing one model KCPA going forward in the future. Pym asks, is it possible for SB 1868 to fail by legislative wayside similar to Florida? When will we know so? Absolutely, that can happen. Pym, thank you for asking that. Sometimes the legislative process gets so bogged down because they're deliberating on the volume of complaints by consumers and by constituents. So that's why these emails and phone calls are so critical, because there can be a slowdown in the process and it could die just because there's no action taken. So absolutely, that's important. And thank you for bringing that up because it's an important part of the all of this. If I ask about Florida, certainly you can watch this after this is done. Misty points out that it's crazy how many 708 Facebook ads that she sees. Well, that's because Facebook makes money on ads, and they're only trying to restrict free speech, not advertise I'm sorry, advertising. So it's one of the it should be humiliating how contradictory it is, but it's the way it is. So that gets to the end of the questions. I'll emphasize again a couple of things. One, we need your voices in Louisiana and Texas. Please respond to them, activate your social networks, find everything that you can in order to give your message to the appropriate legislators. In the case of Louisiana, it's the state senators who will be voting on this on Monday. In Texas, it's going to be targeted to the House Public Health Committee, and we're going to give you that information on how to do it. So stay tuned for your emails to watch how that's done and socialize it, spread it, everything, every way you can to get people to raise their voices, replicate what happened in 2016 when the DEA withdrew the scheduling request from the FDA because of overwhelming public support for this. I think this is really important along the way. And John asked about what he should focus on. We will have our talking points up on the creatingprotectors.org website, and you can go to that, and you're free to use any or all of that talking points on these two bills in both Louisiana and Texas. So thanks to everyone. Raise your voices. Let's be as unified as we can. Let's not try to cannibalize each other when we talk about extracts versus powder. If the product is safely formulated and it meets FDA standards for food grade solvents with extracts, we should be supportive of each other in that fight. And let's not go down the path of shooting at each other. We'll continue to work on that. Misty asked for an update in Colorado. Well, this is close to the end in Colorado. We have agreed to between the GKC and the AKA some language that was amended into the bill. It is being opposed by the Department of Regulation. It has an uncertain pathway to passage with our amendments, but it will die if it doesn't include our amendments. So at least I hope. That's typically what would happen. So we're actually in relatively good shape in Colorado, given that agreement between GKC and AKA. And as I mentioned, we're working hard to develop that unified approach. And I thank the GKC people for their willingness to come and talk and for us to have these kind of reasonable discussions as we go forward. So thanks to every one of you. Said it many, many times that we rely upon advocates. And along that vein, we've opened up our nominations for our latest AKA Hall of Fame for advocates. And so you will see information on how you can nominate people. We want to recognize the leaders in the advocacy community because it truly is because of what you do that we're able to convince legislators and policymakers about the safety of kratom. So we all want to honor you. Please nominate people that you know in your network who have not yet been recognized. And we're going to do this twice a year as we go forward. So please, everyone, take a look at that and let's unify. We've had successes. We can't rest on that, but we've proven that we have the capability of defeating these bands. With your help, we can do that if we unify together. And so I encourage you to do it. Thanks to everyone for taking the time this evening to share a couple of minutes to talk about these important issues, to learn about how you can most effectively discuss these issues with your legislators and take advantage of that opportunity to do so. So thanks to everyone. Appreciate your time and the support that you offer to us. Good evening.